Welcome back, everybody. It is week number 7, day number 3. I'm Mr. Roll, and let's go ahead and get started with our pledge, joke, and our announcements. So, for our announcements for today, I'm going to turn it over and show you a video that Miss Nikki and Mr. Levi were kind enough to make for us, and they will be announcing all of the perfect attendance awards for trimester number 2. So again, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Levi and Miss Nikki to do the perfect attendance announcements for trimester 2. Anyway, we'll see you in just a second.
Hi guys, we were just here to let you guys know that we miss you guys and that we hope we can see you guys soon and hope that you guys are staying safe and healthy. And to let you guys know who won perfect attendance for the second trimester. We have Hazel in 7th grade, Kiara in 8th grade, Karma in 3rd grade, Autumn in 5th grade, Evelyn in 7th grade, Archer in 4th grade, Cecilia in kindergarten, Charlotte in 3rd grade, and Christopher in 8th grade.
We've also got Sophie in 5th grade, Vivian in 3rd grade, Xander in 1st grade, Alexis in kinder, Ryler in 4th grade, Jake in 5th grade, and Tatiana in 8th grade.
Have your parents email our email at info@davincitree.academy to let us know how you would like to receive your awards. We can either email your parents directly with it after they email us, or we can mail it out to you guys. We hope to see you guys soon and stay healthy. Bye.
All right, thank you, Mr. Levi and Miss Nikki, for doing that for us. We hope that, like they said, all of you are at home and you're doing well, you're staying safe and healthy. All right, it's time for the joke of the day. Today's joke, again, they're all just silly, but that's okay. So today's joke is, what did one eye say to the other eye? It said, "Hey, buddy, between us, something smells." Get it? All right, so let's go ahead and without further ado, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. So wherever you are at home or wherever you are watching this, let's go ahead and stand together. If you're wearing a hat, take it off. Place your right hand over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, that's it for our pledge and joke and announcements for this morning. So I hope you all have a fantastic day of online learning. See you soon. Gentlemen, welcome back to another day of online learning. Let's go ahead and take a look at the agenda for week number 7, day number 3. Oh, I hope you guys like my hat. I'm trying to get different hats to wear for different days. So let's go ahead and jump in. In life skills today, we're going to be talking about required courses, elective courses, and prerequisite courses. Yesterday, we talked about GPA. These are all things that are good to know before you 8th graders get on into high school in August. Next up, in current events, we're talking about kind of a sensitive topic. We're talking about how to beat COVID-19 and other epidemics and pandemics that are spread like this. It's sensitive because the way to beat it is something that Americans don't like. The way to beat it requires that you give up some personal freedom and some personal liberty, and you allow the government to track you. And so again, this is something a lot of people in this country and in Europe really don't like and we're really bad at, which is why the pandemics like this get so bad in America and Europe. And so we're talking about it. I hope that, I hope that this topic over here actually gives you hope, because it lets you know that if a disease like COVID-19 ever comes back again, we actually have the tools to be able to fight it. We just, as a country, we need to be willing to use those tools. I hope that makes sense. So we are going to have a big old conversation about that. Now, every day I'm giving you one subject that we're taking a break on. So every day we're breaking a different subject, so you don't have to do that subject for that day to help you catch up. Today that subject is history, so a break for history. Next up in literature, same thing we do every day. We're reviewing chapter 18. Then for homework, you're moving on to chapter 19. In science, we're talking about mechanical advantage, and we're going to be reading through the book after we review what we did yesterday. And we're talking about how to calculate mechanical advantage. In math, you are working on subsets of a sample and probabilities therein. And I'm not going to teach it to you. Actually, Khan Academy does a really good job explaining it in a 9-minute long video. It's 8 or 9 minutes. And then you have to take a quiz. If you're in group number 2, we're doing the same thing that we've done the past 2 nights. You're doing a quick review video, and then you're taking a quiz. That is all that we have on the agenda for today. So let's go ahead and get right to it. All right, let's go ahead and start. This is life skills, and we are in week 7, day number 3. Okay, so week 7, day 3 for life skills. We're going over education. And for this specific part of going over education, we're talking about things that you should probably know to be successful in high school. Now, yesterday we talked about the acronym GPA. Excuse me, I don't know why I have these hiccups, but anyway, we talked about the acronym GPA and how it stands for grade point average. We talked about the difference between a weighted and unweighted grade point average, which again are things that every high schooler should know and understand. And so we're trying to prepare you for high school so that you're going to be able to make good choices and whatnot. And so today, continuing in that vein of understanding, we are talking about classes in high school. So no matter what high school you go to, pretty much all high schools work the same way. Now, all of your life, you've had your classes chosen for you. Now, remember, you kids are becoming more and more mature, but you haven't been in school that long, right? And so in the 9 or so years or 8 or 9 years that you've been in school, your classes have always been presented to you and given to you. Now, in high school, that changes. In high school, you get to pick what classes you take and when you take them, within reason. And so let's go over the different kinds of classes so that you understand what your options are, and in some cases, what your options are not. So this first one is required class or course. So a required class or course is a class or course that you must take in order to graduate. So again, a required class or course is a class or course that you must take in order to graduate. So required classes and courses can still be, you can still have choice, and you can choose to do it like in the morning or in the afternoon in most cases, in most schools, and so you can kind of still choose when you take the class. But these classes are the bedrock classes that you must take in order to get your diploma. All right, so pretty straightforward, it's required. So next up, an elective class or course. An elective class or course is a class or course that is not required in order to graduate. These classes still count towards your GPA, and they are generally taken because you are interested in the topic and chose to try it out. Now, elective classes, again, you don't need to take elective classes to graduate. These classes are completely up to you. And so, you can take an art class or maybe a pottery class. You can do elective PE classes. I know when I was in high school, I actually took a bowling class. It was a class where we went to the bowling alley and we bowled. It was awesome. And so elective classes and courses you don't have to take in order to graduate, they're classes that you take for fun, but they still count towards your grade. Now, one last thing that might be a little confusing, okay? Many schools require you to take a certain number of electives. So even though electives are not required to graduate, you still have to take a certain number of them in order to get your degree. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but it is what it is. Finally, a prerequisite class or course. This is a class or course that you need to take before another class or course. So again, it's like a prequel. Like a prequel movie is the movie that comes before the other movie, or a prequel book is the book that comes before the other book. It's just like that. A prerequisite class is like a prequel class. So it's just a class that you need to take before you take another class. So for instance, let's pretend that you want to take advanced poetry. I don't know, maybe you're super into poetry. If you want to take an advanced poetry class in high school, more than likely, you actually would have to take Introduction to Poetry first. And so Introduction to Poetry might be a prerequisite for advanced poetry. Or maybe you want to take algebra in high school, and a prerequisite for algebra could be pre-algebra. Something like that. So again, a prerequisite class is simply a class that you have to take before you take another class. Some classes have multiple prerequisite courses. Other classes have no prerequisites. And when you're signing up for classes in high school, if you keep these three things in mind, which classes and courses are required, which ones are elective, and which ones need a prerequisite course, you are well on your way to be able to wisely choose your own class schedule in order to give yourself the best high school experience possible. All right, that's it for our life skills for today. Hopefully you learned something new to help you get prepared for what's up ahead just in coming around the bend in August for you 8th graders who are graduating and whatnot, okay? We are about to jump into current events. And quick warning, we are talking about COVID-19 in current events, and I hope I don't upset anybody, but we are actually talking about an interesting method to deal with epidemics like COVID-19 to prevent us from having to go through everything that we've been through so far with this epidemic. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right into that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are looking at week 7, day number 3, and today for current events and economics, we are shifting back to talking about some current events. So here's the deal. I got another email today talking about another one of the families in our middle school that has been affected by COVID-19. So if you're at home and you think you don't know anyone who's been affected by COVID-19, that's not true. If you are part of our class at Vinci in the middle school, you do know people who've been affected by COVID-19. It's not my place to share their stories, and so I'm not gonna. But it is a serious thing. So I wanted to talk about, for maybe today and tomorrow, maybe even all the way until day 5, the way forward. So COVID-19 and other diseases that are pandemics or epidemics don't have to be the end of the world. There are ways that countries and societies cope with these diseases to minimize loss of life and continue moving forward. And so the way that we have handled it in our country and the way that we've handled it in Europe is not the best way. So today I want to talk about one country in particular, and I want to talk about what they've done. And so the method that I want to talk about that this country has used to fight COVID-19 and the coronavirus is something called manual contact tracing. Again, manual contact tracing. Now, tomorrow we're going to talk about automated or technological contact tracing, but today we're talking about manual contact tracing. And the country in particular that we're talking about is Taiwan. Now, Taiwan is a small country off the coast of China, people in China view Taiwan as being a province of China, but people in Taiwan say that they're separate. So there's kind of a conflict there that I really don't want to get into. But it's a little bit like if Hawaii believed that it was its own country, but America believed that Hawaii was a state. And people in Hawaii disagreed with the people in the rest of the country, but we all just kind of got along. Imagine it's a situation just like that. The Taiwanese and the Chinese are all very friendly, but they disagree on what Taiwan is, and so it's awkward, right? So I don't know if you know this, but you and I are talking over the internet right now. It's kind of a one-way communication because I can't hear you, but our schools are all closed. In the United States, all of our schools are closed, and everybody is doing school something like this over the internet. And that is the case in most of Europe. In fact, some European schools just began opening up again. But in Taiwan, the schools had pretty much stayed open the entire time. And if you think about it, China's here, and Taiwan's like right underneath. Shouldn't Taiwan be more affected by the coronavirus than America? America's far away from China, and Taiwan is their neighbor. How did Taiwan do it? How did Taiwan keep coronavirus at bay? In Taiwan, again, they don't have any of the closures that we have. They don't have the mandatory lockdowns that we have. We've been on lockdown for months, or stay-at-home orders for months. In Taiwan, they didn't have to do that. So how did they do it? Well, they used something called contact tracing, or manual contact tracing. Manual contact tracing is something that countries do to prevent the spread of very infectious diseases. It is a program that was designed many years ago. I don't know exactly when, to be honest, but I know that we've been using manual contact tracing for at least 20 years, probably more than 20 years. So it's not a new idea, it's an old idea, and it works very, very well. What it is we figure out who is sick, okay, so we figure out who is sick, and then we figure out all of the people who've come in contact with that sick person. And then we reach out to all the people who've come into contact with that sick person, and all of the people that that sick person has been in contact with are monitored. They're kept an eye on to see if they get sick too. And then if those people get sick, everybody that they've been in contact with is also contacted and monitored to see if they get sick. And so we call it contact tracing because we're tracing back all the different people that the sick person has come into contact with. And usually, if there's the sick person and then everybody they've been into contact with, all the people that they've been in contact with isolate themselves so that they're not interacting with a lot of other people and possibly spreading the disease. Now, for COVID-19 in particular, they have to isolate for 2 weeks because it takes about 2 weeks for the virus to hit your system and then for it to actually show symptoms. But during that 2-week period of time, as best we can tell, you're still contagious. And so contact tracing works very well. And in Taiwan, they've had, I think, only around 500 or 600 cases for the whole country, maybe less. All right. And they've kept the whole country open because they've done this contact tracing. Now, in America and Europe, we don't like the idea of contact tracing because we don't trust when governments want to keep tabs on us. Excuse me. And so it's not really necessarily a problem with our government because the government in Taiwan is a parliamentary democracy, very similar to governments in Europe, and their constitution was actually taken and modeled after the United States. So the system of government that they use is not the difference, all right? The idea and the people are the difference. So in the United States and in Europe, when people start talking about contact tracing, citizens go ballistic. And so if you are actually interested in the nuts and bolts of how contact tracing works, I'm attaching a video from the World Health Organization that was published in 2015 for the Ebola outbreak. And so Ebola in West Africa was killed, like the Ebola virus was squashed, because the World Health Organization stepped in and worked with these countries in West Africa. They did extensive contact tracing and isolation, and they were able to kill the disease before it spread to the rest of the world. That was awesome. It was a huge feat, because Ebola was much worse than COVID-19 in terms of what it did to you and how many people it would kill that got infected, right? And so, anyway, it works. Contact tracing worked there, and it works for COVID-19. It works for every disease, guys. And so if you want to see how it works, this video is a 45-minute video. I've not watched the whole thing, but the video was set up by the World Health Organization to teach people in different countries how to do contact tracing. And so this is a how-to video. Now, the thing that I find most interesting about this World Health Organization how-to video are the comments. Now, the World Health Organization made the mistake of leaving the comments turned on, and if you read the comments, most of which are from Americans, Americans hate this. And all of the commenters from the United States and Europe are going there like, screw this, Big Brother wants to keep an eye on you. Oh, Big Brother's watching. Oh, anybody who thinks this is a good idea hates freedom, blah, 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 blah. And so it's interesting. When you see the gut reaction that Americans and Europeans have to this common sense way to deal with these terrible epidemics, you begin to understand why America and Europe make up less than a quarter of the world's population. I think I think combined America and Europe or something, I have to look it up, but I think it's around 12 to 15%. So America and Europe make about 12 to 15% of the world's population, but we're more than half of the world's coronavirus cases, because we have this natural resistance to these common sense things because they violate people's privacy. And so contact tracing is a violation of privacy, but it also is the best way to stop the spread of epidemics. And so in the future, if the United States is ever hit with another epidemic, it would actually be a great idea to practice contact tracing. And so at the end of this video, we have for your homework, we have 2 links for you to watch. And they're both from a news channel that is very well respected. It's from PBS, the same folks that bring us like Sesame Street and Daniel Tiger. They have a really good news program that is generally considered one of the most non-biased and one of the most factually accurate news programs in the entire country. And so we have 2 links from PBS NewsHour that then the first one discusses contact tracing. What is contact tracing, and how does it work, and how could we be using it in the United States? And the second video talks about Taiwan. You're actually going to see people in Taiwan, Taiwanese citizens who came back to Taiwan. One came back from Britain and the other one came back from Australia, and their experience. And so you can kind of hear from them what Taiwanese contact tracing looks like. Again, if there's ever another reoccurrence of COVID-19, a second wave, or if there ever is another infectious disease in the United States that is really bad, contact tracing can be one method for us to stop it, and these videos show us how. The last thing I'll say is that countries that practice contact tracing are often much less wealthy than the United States. A couple of weeks ago, we talked to one of my best friends, Alan Damulira, in the poor and small country of Uganda. Uganda practices contact tracing. They're not perfect, but they do practice it, and they do a lot of COVID-19 testing. Now, last time I talked to Alan, most of Uganda is open. Most of Uganda is back to work. They still practice social distancing, just like they do in Taiwan, but the country has been open for business for a while. And again, America, the world's most powerful, richest, and many would argue the best country in the world, is still stuck at a snail's pace. And we still have, 2,000 to 3,000 people dying every day. And it doesn't have to be that way. So anyway, let's go ahead and show today's video. And I hope I didn't make anyone angry with what I said. And in fact, what I want to do is I want to explain how science real good medical science can help save us from these things. And so hopefully the next time this happens, whether it's in your and my lifetime or whether it's for our great-grandchildren, hopefully the next time this happens to people in America, we can handle it in a way that doesn't cause us to shut down our country for multiple months. All right, let's go ahead and watch the videos. Oh, I forgot to mention at the end of the life skills lesson, or the current events lesson, every day I'm going to be giving you guys a break in one subject, and today the subject that I'm giving you a break in is U.S. history, so you don't have any U.S. history homework. We can go ahead, skip ahead to literature. All right, that's it. All right, everybody, I got my literature hat on, so that means it must be time for Adventures of Tom Sawyer. So I think we were on chapter 18. It's right after the funeral chapter. So in the chapter after the funeral chapter, our buddy Tom, he is back at home, and Aunt Polly is pretty mad. So at the funeral, Aunt Polly is like super ecstatic that he's not dead. And then later on, after she has some time to like process it, she's just like really angry with him. And so Tom, super clever boy, decides to help kind of get rid of some of the anger by describing to her a dream. And in the dream, he tells her about all the things that he heard when he snuck into the house. And Aunt Polly is so amazed by this somewhat prophetic dream or whatnot that she kind of just lets it go and forgives him. And the only person who thinks that he's kind of like not being really honest is his brother Sid. And so anyway, Tom gets by with that trick, and so it's pretty clever. And then later on in the chapter, wait, what happens? Oh, he goes to school. Everyone at school is really happy and kind of like they think that he's really cool. Kind of treat him like he's a real big shot. And then Becky is excited to see him, but he's kind of ignoring her and being kind of cruel. And so she invites everybody. I think she invites them to a picnic, and she leaves out Tom and the other girl, Amy. And then when Tom and Amy are ignoring her, she gets Tom back by hanging out with the boy that Tom was fighting at the beginning of the story. I think his name's Alfred. And so Tom and Amy are there, and then he realizes that Becky and Alfred are hitting it off, and that makes Tom upset, and because Tom realizes that he's kind of being stiffed, and then so he goes home, I think for lunch or something like that. And as soon as Tom leaves, Becky drops Alfred, and Alfred realizes kind of what happened, that he was just a pawn in her social plan, and so he dumps ink all over Tom's book to get him in trouble. And Becky thinks about, Becky thinks about whether or not she is going to tell him, but then she decides not to because she also thinks that he's like a bad person. So anyway, that was all of the chapter. It was kind of if I remember correctly, this one was kind of like a story-dense chapter, is a little bit longer. And so tonight for your homework, read the next chapter. This next one, I believe, is shorter. Chapter 19. Make sure you do any spelling words and any vocabulary words for your grades. And that's it. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at science. Go ahead and get started with science. Yesterday, we started reading about machines and what a machine is from like a physics/science point of view. Oops, I hate this creaking. I gotta find a comfortable position. All right, so anyway, we realized that a machine helps us to do work by making the work easier for us. Now, the same amount of work is being done whenever you use a machine, but what it's manipulating is the required input force or the distance, one or the other. And so, for example, the required input force on a bicycle is actually more than if you were just walking, but what it does is it propels you at a speed and distance that is far greater than walking to accomplish your work in a manner that is easier for you. Conversely, a ramp goes the other way. All right, so again, a bicycle increases or requires an increased input force, and it gives you a greater distance. And whereas a ramp minimizes the input force. So rolling something up a ramp requires less input force than picking it up and walking upstairs or whatever. But it is a longer distance, so it requires you to cover more distance. All right. This is important right here. Okay. A machine makes work easier by changing the amount of force you exert, the distance over which you exert your force, or the direction in which you exert your force. So all important stuff. We have input force is what you put in, output force is what you get out of it. We talked about multiplying distance, changing direction, and multiplying force as all functions of a machine. So today we're talking about mechanical advantage. Figure 8, chop, chop, chop. A knife is a knife is a machine that makes your work easier when you prepare a tasty meal. So even knives are considered to be machines from a physics point of view. So mechanical advantage. If you compare the input force to the output force, you can determine the advantage of using a machine. A machine's mechanical advantage is the number of times a force exerted on a machine is multiplied by the machine. Finding the ratio of output force to input force gives you the mechanical advantage of a machine. So, mechanical advantage equals the output force divided by the input force. And that is your mechanical advantage. Again, the output force divided by your input force. Mechanical advantage of multiplying force. For a machine that multiplies force, the mechanical advantage is greater than 1. That is because the output force is greater than the input force. For example, consider a manual can opener. Okay, a manual can opener, guys, it's one of those ones where you have the grip and then you turn the thing, right? If you exert a force of 20 newtons on the opener, and the opener exerts a force of 60 newtons on the can, the mechanical advantage of the can opener is 60 newtons divided by 20 newtons, or 3. The can opener tripled your force. Or suppose you would have to exert 3,200 newtons to lift a piano. If you use a ramp, you might only need to exert 1,600 newtons. The mechanical advantage of this ramp is 3,200 newtons divided by 1,600 newtons, or 2. The ramp doubles the force that you exert. See? Again, mechanical advantage, output divided by input. Mechanical advantage of multiplying distance. Okay, so that was the mechanical advantage of multiplying force. Now we're looking at the mechanical advantage of multiplying distance. So when we're multiplying force, remember, we're multiplying force by increasing the distance. And so rolling the piano up the ramp is actually going a longer distance than picking it up. Like we discussed, using that can opener, that manual can opener, is increasing the distance that the work is performed over, but it concentrates that work on that point to unseal the can lid. All right? So this is the opposite now, mechanical advantage of multiplying distance. For a machine that multiplies distance, the output force is less than the input force. Let me read that again. For a machine that multiplies distance, the output force is less than the input force. So in this case, the mechanical advantage is less than 1. If, for example, you exert an input force of 20 newtons and the machine produces an output force of 10 newtons, the mechanical advantage is 10 divided by 20, or 0.5. The output force of the machine is half of your input force, but the machine exerts that force over a longer distance. So again, when we're multiplying distance, kids, the mechanical advantage is going to be less than 1. Finally, mechanical advantage of changing direction. What can you predict about the mechanical advantage of a machine that changes the direction of the force? If only the direction changes, the input force will be the same as the output force. So again, we're not changing the force in any way except for the direction. The mechanical advantage will be 1. Same mechanical advantage, same output as the input, just in a different direction. Makes sense? All right, so efficiency of machines. So far, you've learned that the work you put into a machine, the input work, is exactly equal to the work done by the machine, or output work. In an ideal situation, this is true. In real situations, however, the output work is always less than the input work. If you have ever tried to cut something with scissors or barely open and close, if you have ever tried to cut something with scissors that barely open and close, you know that a large part of your work is wasted overcoming the tightness or friction between the parts of the scissors. Now, kids, when you get older, if you continue on in physics, you're going to learn about the concept of entropy. And so this is all a simple way to describe entropy, in case you're already familiar with that term. If you have, in any machine, some work is wasted overcoming friction. The less friction there is, the closer the output work is to the input work. The efficiency of a machine compares the output work to the input work. Efficiency is expressed as 8%. The higher the percent, the more efficient the machine is. If the tight scissors described above have an efficiency of 60%, a little more than half of the work you do goes into cutting the paper. So again, if they're only 60% efficient, only 60% of what you're doing, only 60% of the work you're putting in is actually going to do the task you want. The other 40% is wasted. All right? So again, with a pair of scissors, the other 40% is wasted on the friction caused by the crummy scissors. The rest is wasted overcoming the friction in the scissors. A machine that has an efficiency of 95% loses very little work. An ideal machine would have an efficiency of 100%. Now, almost nothing in life has an efficiency of 100%. I don't know if this is still true or not, but when I was growing up, cars that use gasoline, the efficiency rate of cars that use gasoline is under 25%. So that means that most of the energy that's trapped in the gasoline is actually wasted and becomes a byproduct of like waste heat and things like that. Today it's much more efficient, so it might be as high as like 50 or 60%, but we have a lot of waste. Cars are not very efficient users of gasoline, at least last time I checked. So all machines are less than 100% efficient because on Earth we have friction and atmosphere and all these other things that the machine must overcome, as well as doing the performed tasks that you want them to do. Okay, you know what? We have some problems to do tomorrow, and I was going to read the calculating efficiency part with you, but I'm going to save that for tomorrow so it's fresh in your mind when you have to do your homework problems. Tonight, no homework in science. Hooray! Jazz hands. All right. Oh, time for math. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is the end of our online learning day. As it was yesterday in math, so it is again today. So for group number 1, you have a video tutorial that takes you through how to solve these kinds of probability problems that Khan Academy wants you to solve. So you have the tutorial video and then you have the actual quiz. So go ahead, watch the tutorial, then take the quiz. For those of you in math group number 2, the exact same thing that we've been doing the 2 previous nights, we're going to do tonight. So on today is day 3. So on week 7, day 1, you worked with exponents that had the same base multiplied together. On day 2, you worked with exponents that were taken to another exponent or a power to a power. On day 3 today, you're going to be working with exponents on bases that are not multiplied together. You're going to be working with exponents on bases that are divided. So you're going to be subtracting the exponents. All right, so group 1 and group 2, go ahead and take a look at that Khan Academy homework. And this is the end of my video for today. I will see you tomorrow for week number 7, day number 4. Have a great rest of your day. I look forward to seeing you then.